It's too bad she won't live. But then again, who does?
Welcome to Popped, where you can learn about and relive some of the best that entertainment has to offer. We'll revisit some of our favorite films that helped influence and shape our lives. Now sit back, strap in, and keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. And if you have to, take a shot of whiskey to keep from swooning when you hear their voices. Here are your hosts,
Daniel, Ben, and Tanya.
In 1982, the dystopian science fiction thriller classic Blade Runner was released into theaters.
The setting is an overpopulated, overpolluted Los Angeles in the future year of 2019, where giant ziggurats and fire-belching smokestacks populate the landscape.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the novel by Philip K. Dick that would inspire Blade Runner, was published in 1968, set in the far-off year of 1992. After a nuclear war had decimated animal life. The novel follows Rick Deckard, a California bounty hunter hired to expire rogue Andes.
Blade Runner polarized critics and underperformed at the box office. It was considered a commercial failure, bringing in only $41.6 million versus its $30 million budget.
Despite that, it's heralded as the principal template of neo-noir filmmaking, as well as the foundational paragon of the cyberpunk genre.
Blade Runner's unique score was composed by Vangelis, who gained fame from his previous work on Chariots of Fire. The American Film Institute nominated his work for Blade Runner and Chariots of Fire for their list of the 25 greatest film scores.
Many actors, including Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Peter Falk, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, and Burt Reynolds were considered for the lead role. It ultimately went to Harrison Ford.
Rutger Hauer, on the other hand, was the only actor considered and cast for the role of the hyper-violent yet contemplative Roy Batty. In fact, Ridley Scott cast him based solely on his performances in other films and had never met him.
One of the film's most iconic lines is uttered by Hauer, known as the Tears in Rain speech. It was written and partly ad-libbed by Hauer himself.
Blade Runner's extremely intentional metropolis visually places the wealthy living above the rest of the populace. It's an industrial nightmare, with giant ziggurats figuratively reaching towards the sky.
The symbolism is not subtle, and the underlying themes of humanity, inhumanity, and environmental destruction were prescient concerns of the writers in their time.
Despite its failing at the theater, Blade Runner became a cult favorite and is largely regarded as the best science fiction film of all time.
It is a success visually, thematically, and technically, yet Blade Runner had its problems. Harrison Ford was extremely dissatisfied with the tinkering from studio executives who wanted certain changes made to what he already believed was a perfect film.
Ford's consternation with the revision was a thorn in the side of director Ridley Scott, who considered Harrison to be one of the most difficult actors he'd worked with to date.
Scott is known for being a perfectionist and sometimes reshooting the same shot 20 or 30 times in order to get the perfect take. Needless to say, on a set where it was constantly cold and wet, this did not sit well with the actors.
There are 7 different versions of this film due to the controversial changes requested by studio executives. However, in 2007, a final cut was released that encompassed the true narrative of the director's vision and probably much more closely resembled the film that Harrison Ford had envisioned during filming.
In 2017, a sequel was released titled Blade Runner 2049, and it used the storyline from the first film as a backdrop for a new story set in the same universe many years later.
Blade Runner remains the gold standard of cyberpunk, dystopian, futuresque masterpieces. Despite all of the struggles involved in making the film, it has persevered and has earned its place in cinematic history.
Here we go. Our first official episode of season 3 that isn't a bonus episode. Before we get started, I'd like to give a shout out to our Patreon subscribers, who are Joe Addy, Rick Rigoli, and Susanna Reeves, and Victor, whose last name shall remain a mystery, and our newest Patreon subscriber, Shannon Womack. Thank you all for your patronage. We have been making special monthly episodes in the off season for them, and will continue to do so during our regular season. So far, our Patreon episodes have been Andor, Knives Out, and Glass Onion. Patreon members, depending on their level of support, get the free episodes and swag that comes with their tier after 3 months. If you'd like to support our show, head to our website and you'll find a direct link to our Patreon on the top right that says support. You'll also get this really cool and shiny shout out on our show. I've begun releasing in parts the Curtis Armstrong interview that we did towards the end of our first season and putting them up on our YouTube page. And right now, I've got 3 parts up there. You can also find them on our website, podcast.com. But please go to those videos, watch them, click like, subscribe to our YouTube. That would be really helpful right now, as we're trying to get noticed by some of the conventions so we can set up a table there and meet people in person. We also want to do some contests that'll be really cool. We're going to give away some really cool items. I'll show you one of the items that we're going to give away. As we're doing the episode later on the season, The Expanse, we're going to be offering these little desktop dioramas of the Rocinante. Can you see that?
Not quite.
Nope.
There it is.
Oh,
Little
hold
bit.
on.
Sort of. It blinked in and out of existence.
Is it because of the backdrop?
I think so.
Oh, look at maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I'll move it right in front of me.
There you go.
So it's a little desktop diorama that you can put on your desk, or anywhere really, I guess. I guess you could put it in your bathroom if you wanted, or your kitchen. Oh, anyway, we're gonna have those. We're looking at getting a whole bunch of other things, like DVD box sets and potentially like a Mandalorian helmet or 2, and putting those up for raffle. So if we get into the conventions, we'll be doing the contest at the conventions. If we can't get in the conventions, we'll be doing it on either Facebook or one of those live edits where we can draw and do the names there. And we'd like to involve all of you and let you know how you can be in that contest. We'll reveal the way you can enter later on the season. Right now, just know that that's coming up. So we're working to get you some pretty cool things and earn that support you've been giving us. Wait, don't we already earn their support by doing these episodes?
Either way, thank you very much for all of your support.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Okay. So, yeah, without any further ado, we're here to talk about Blade Runner. Now, Blade Runner to me, I'm going to just kibosh the whole thing later with the pops. Blade Runner is probably my favorite film of all time. And I'll just say that right off the bat. So you kind of already know where I'm going to go. But there are certain reasons why Blade Runner is my favorite film. A lot of them have to do with the music. Vangelis soundtrack is absolutely mesmerizing. The film itself is hypnotic. It's dark, but beautiful at the same time. And the motifs and symbolism in Blade Runner are something that grabs me as a film viewer. When I watch movies, it's these type of elements, these type of things that pull me into a film. Before I get into all the symbolism and motif, kind of want to get your initial impressions of what you thought of Blade Runner. We'll start. Tanya, you want to start?
Sure. Well, the first time I saw it, I was in high school, because I think I was only 10 when the movie actually came out in theaters, so probably like junior in high school. And we had watched it at a sleepover, and we were all just gobsmacked, blown away by it. And for the next, 15 years, like all through my late teens, 20s, washed it into the ground, because back then we had video stores and you'd go rent it and then have it overdue and then bring it back late and pay all the fines and just watch it forever and ever. It's great fun. So you streaming people, you don't know what you missed if you're little youngins. I'm just saying, it was the joys of the overdue fees.
I have to say,
however,
that this was probably the first video I may have bought and owned.
Oh, no kidding.
And I watched it into the ground as well. Yeah.
That's excellent. Very good. Yeah, but it grabs you from the instant you see it. The mood of it is so perfect. It is probably one of the most realistic takes on a dystopian future that I have ever seen. And I love the philosophical and ethical questions that it brings up. There's just a lot of meat there to digest. And still to this day, when I watch it, I still glean new things from it, even though I've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah, I'm curious, Ben. I know you're not much of a time travel person film, but how or time travel film person, you get the words in the right order there, but how are you about films that take place in the future?
Oh, I'm perfectly fine with films that take place in the future. And this one is absolutely one of my tippy top favorites of all time. I think you and Tanya both touched on things that I would say about it. Without giving away how many pops I'm going to give the movie, this is a perfect film. It absolutely just is.
It didn't give away anything.
No. Yes, my pop score is still up in the air completely. One of the things that I absolutely love about this film that has not been mentioned yet is the fact that, yes, it is a dark feeling film, definitely a dark story. But in order to make it feel dark, they didn't turn the lights down to the point where you can't see it. Batman. We can still see everything that's going on. It is so incredibly well done. I don't have enough positive words to say about it.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about, before we get into the symbolism, the motif of the film, let's talk about the visions of the future and things that didn't happen, because this was a look forward into the year 2019, right? We're now in 2023. So what are some of the things that didn't happen? Well, flying cars.
Yep.
Off-world migration to get away from environmental catastrophe. At least not yet. Right. Androids that are so human they blur the lines between man and machine, although that also might be right around the corner. Los Angeles being a living hell of ziggurats and flame-spewing smokestacks. The other thing that really stuck out for me with LA, and this was, I feel like this was an oversight on the filmmaker's part. One of the reasons that LA is spread out as far as it is and not a huge skyscraping metropolis is because it's on a fault line. So when I see these buildings, where he's on the 93rd floor, that's not going to be something in the future of LA. It's just not, unless they can figure out how to sew those fault lines shut, right? Did you guys notice any other things that were going to be in the future in this film that didn't necessarily happen?
Replacement body parts, or engineered body parts. There are still some bits of experimentation with that going on. But for example, we don't have some guy working in a frozen lab being able to make new eyeballs that we could just pop into somebody.
Tanya, you got anything?
Yes, I actually felt like it did in certain ways predict where we are to a certain extent. Obviously this is hyper fictionalized, but the corporatocracy that exists during that time, with corporations kind of running everything, well, we're kind of there already, at least in this country. for the most part.
It's not as bad as it is in this film.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
we still have the veneer of democracy, so that
we're still
that
pretending
helps,
anyway.
We are still pretending. Yes, we like to pretend about that. It makes life easier.